Welcome, everybody, to the A-Spook-inati Podcast. Ooh, see what I did there?
Nice play on words.
No stranger to plays of words here on the Assuminati Podcast, where we are bringing you a spooktacular edition of the show. It is October 2021. Let's spook it up a little bit, huh? We've had some fun dipping into some conspiracies and some controversies with the Denver International Airport, the Georgia Guidestones. We hope you like those episodes, the topics that we hit. We're going to bring you something a little bit more local this week and this month. We'll see how many more we can hit. Ooh, some local legends, some urban legends, urban myths.
Legendary.
You can call them controversies, conspiracies. We'll let you be the judge. Maybe we'll give you a few fun places to visit as well.
I hope so.
Something fun to do other than cards and
night.
jack-o'-lanterns. Going to date night.
Come on.
Well, let's go old school. It is a local legend. It's a local place of interest. This happens to be one of the oldest places in the state. We're going to take you to the Salt Lake City Cemetery.
Awesome.
Ooh, spooky. So what can you tell us about the Salt Lake City Cemetery, Matt? Introduce us to this place of interest.
Sure. Yeah, Salt Lake City Cemetery is known as the most haunted cemetery in Utah.
Ooh.
Of all the cemeteries. And I happen to know that there's some pretty scary cemeteries in Utah. One just right up the street from me, and one where my dad is buried. But Salt Lake City, most haunted cemetery in Utah. It's a beautiful place. It's large. It's 220 acres. Contains the graves of more than 125,000 people.
Oh, wow.
Graves date back to the mid-1800s. So there's a lot of people buried there, a lot of history, and a lot of scary things and unexplained events happening there.
Wow.
So we can get into some of that, but just to kind of breeze through a few of those things, some people that have visited graves up in the Salt Lake City Cemetery have explained that they've seen little children playing hide and seek in the gravestones and running around. They've seen early, what they term as Mormon pioneers dressed in pioneer garb, around the gravestones, women wearing pioneer era clothing, they say. Cries of babies near family plots have been heard. In the military section, some of the soldiers that are buried there have been seen wandering through the cemetery dressed in their soldier gear.
Crazy.
So these are firsthand accounts of what people have seen. Among a few other things, we're going to get to two specific graves and things that are very specific urban legends tied to the Salt Lake City Cemetery, but those are the main things. So it's known as, the most haunted cemetery in Utah. The ghost of an old man walks along roads that meander through the cemetery. People have said that they've seen, if you drive through dusk, you'll see the old man walking along the road, but then he disappears as your car approaches. Stuff like that. So we'll get into a few other things.
Was he wearing a Walkman and some basketball shorts, or was that just what we saw?
That was the guy we saw.
Oh, and so we'd like to tell everybody, the three of us here, as well as one of our friends, we had a morning, didn't we?
Breakfast.
We visited a big old stack of pancakes and then the Salt Lake City Cemetery. I can't think of a better morning.
It was magical.
It was beautiful.
Totally worth taking a day off. Go to the cemetery, get some breakfast. Nothing weird about that.
It was beautiful.
Nope.
Great company.
Totally legit.
Quiet neighbors. Stack of pancakes. We saw a lot of people in that cemetery. It's huge. Like you said, 200 and some odd acres, right?
It's not real easy to find a certain grave there.
It keeps going. And I have family. I have family buried there. My wife has family buried there. We've been there for funerals or visiting graves. And
220 acres.
220 acres with over 100,000 graves, right? So there's
125,000 people.
Wow.
So
in
more than
downtown Salt Lake City.
It's really in the avenues, right? So is that considered downtown?
Downtown.
Okay. Downtown.
There it is.
I mean, anything away from me is downtown.
Anything
The
outside
city.
of 500
Downtown.
people is the
Downtown.
big city.
Honey,
Big
I'm going
city.
into the city to mess with some graves. I mean, that
Mhm.
is,
Big city nights for Robert, baby.
Yeah.
Let's get out on the town.
and I know the look on my wife's face when I told her what we were doing. It was actually a look of excitement. This is a what we're about to talk about. The graves that we will focus on, the ones that we found interesting, are local legends that have been passed down from generation to generation. Kids in the area, especially, pass those stories on to each other. They know these stories well. One of these graves is super popular. The other one, I think, is still well known, but we'll touch on it.
I mean, I didn't grow up in Salt Lake, and I'd never heard about this stuff till you guys
Okay.
told me about it.
Cool.
So, I mean, it was pretty cool to hear about.
Right on. Okay, so let's start with our first point of interest within the Salt Lake City Cemetery. So this is probably the most famous grave there, and that's saying something. That grave site, or that cemetery, is full of all of the who's who of Utah. You want to talk about any influential politician, businessman, or woman, they're buried there, most likely. Some of the, again, a who's who
It's an important place.
of Utah history are
It's
buried
like the
there.
Hollywood Walk of Fame
It really,
of Utah.
it really is.
You get your star up there.
Yeah.
Wow.
They have a map at
That's one way to look
the
at it.
Sexton's office to tell you all the important graves.
And
And they give tours, right? Don't they give tours?
As I was Googling it, there are people who do this privately, and I think you can schedule a tour with the
That's what we
cemetery
should have done,
themselves.
guys. Maybe we'll
Well,
do
I
that one
have
time.
to say, like when we pulled in and there was that school bus, and I joked that the kids were on a field trip.
They probably were.
Well, in reality, I thought the bus driver was
Or
just
as a tour
killing
group.
time, until he had to pick kids up. And then we saw all these kids and their teachers walking back to the bus. Can you imagine going on a field trip to the Salt Lake City Cemetery?
And like you mentioned, they've really diversified the shrubbery and the trees within that place. Maybe they're there like in an arboretum type field trip, seeing the sights. Anyway, yeah, so it's a diverse place as far as what you can see. It's a beautiful place. It overlooks the city, the valley.
It's on a nice hill.
And into a lot
It's
of people,
gorgeous.
it's the creepiest place you can go, apparently, according to some of these accounts. So let's focus on the first grave site, the first of two that we'll focus on. This is what's known as Emo's grave.
Emo.
So
Yeah,
what
Robert?
what can you tell us about Emo? Who was
you got,
this
man?
person?
Yeah, so Emo's grave is the burial site. Well, not burial because he wasn't actually buried there, but it's the mausoleum for Jacob Moritz. And Jacob, he was born in Germany in 1849. He immigrated to the United States in 1865. He was 16 at the time. When he came to the United States, he spent some time in New York City, where he worked at a brewing company. He then moved to St. Louis, where he worked for Anheuser-Busch. Then he decided he wanted to become a miner and somehow made his way to Montana. Not sure if he just didn't, like digging holes or wasn't successful at finding things. But eventually he made his way to Salt Lake City. And that's really where he made his mark.
Would you say that he was a major miner? Was he really into it?
I don't know. I don't think so because he didn't continue on with it.
Oh.
But anyways, he came to Salt Lake City in 1871. That's where he opened Little Montana Brewery, taking his experience from previous brewing. And within just a few years, he became really successful. And his brewery became the one of the largest breweries in the Western United States. So important dude. He spent almost 40 years in Salt Lake City. And I mentioned that his brewery became quite large. It was the largest outside of Milwaukee.
What was he brewing? Just beer?
Yeah, that's what it's like.
Right? Or what?
100,000 barrels a year.
Yeah.
That's what that guy was pumping out.
And that's back in the day. That would have had to be pretty tough.
It's nuts. I'm showing some well-known brewers in the area.
Yeah. So this article says Uinta Brewing Company and Utah Brewers Cooperative combined to produce about 30,000 barrels of beer annually.
So it's pretty big. Sold his beer throughout Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Colorado, Wyoming. It even made it to parts of California. And he also owned 36 saloons. So, like, this guy was intense. He was like the Budweiser horses of his time. So pretty cool. And then in 1889, he got married. That seems like a really long time for a bachelor running a brewery, especially in Utah. I was single till the age of 27 in Utah and looked at as quite odd. So I can only imagine how he was looked upon. But married this lady from Hawaii. She then came to Salt Lake. They were both very active in the Jewish community. Let's see, what else? He was very involved in Utah politics with the Liberal Party. Interesting how that played out in conservative Utah. And despite the fact that he made his fortune in this production and sale of alcohol, he was involved in less popular liberal politics. He was embraced by the Utah's Mormon population. They loved the guy. And so he was extremely popular. He was well liked. And then later in life, the dude got kind of sick. And so he decided he wanted to go back to Germany. But that's where he died due to the effects of lung and stomach cancer. And while he was in Germany, his wife and his siblings, they were present when he died. He was at the age of 61. And none of that has anything to do with Emo's grave for the most part, other than it's his. But this is where the legend begins. So according to a newspaper article that announced his death, his wife had chosen to have him cremated, probably easier to transport back. I mean, who wants to haul a corpse from Germany back to Utah? And her intention was to have him put in the Jewish section of the Salt Lake City Cemetery. There's a mausoleum built there. It is quite impressive. And his remains were put in there. And so that's really Jacob Moritz and how the mausoleum came to be.
Yeah, thank you for all that info, Robert. This is Jacob E. Moritz's mausoleum gravesite. E. Moritz, emo.
Say it one more time.
Emo.
All right.
Eepa.
Emo.
Emo.
Not to be short for emotional, it was a part of his name. Now, you wouldn't find that on the actual gravesite, as you can see from the pictures. It is a Moritz grave with a big M emblem. People have vandalized this site several times. So what you would find today if you were to visit the site is actually a big old metal plate, I guess you could say, covering what was a hole in this mosque. So we'll show pictures of before and after here. We visited the site. We found it eventually, based on some articles that we
and
found.
a lot of driving.
I had visited it about 10 years ago. So my memory was fuzzy on where to find it. And I remember pre-plate, so before they boarded it up, before the plate was put on. And it was kind of a creepy looking hole. It had a little vase. What do you call those things? An urn? Is that what I'm looking for here?
Urn. Yeah.
An urn?
It's like what you do every day.
I got an urn.
Oh, wait, it's spelled differently.
Yeah, a little bit.
Slightly.
Now, by the time I saw it 10 years ago.
It's your urn.
By the time I saw it 10 years ago, it was the replacement urn because the original urn was vandalized, broken, before I saw it generations ago, probably years ago. Now, here's the legend, or at least here's what people have passed down from generation to generation to their kids and their kids, is at night, you walk backwards around this mausoleum, this grave site, and recite the words emo, emo, emo. So you're walking backwards 3 times. You then stare into the middle of this hole, of this window, if you will, and you will see a creature or a ghost with red eyes staring right back at you.
That sounds creepy.
Now, I believe
creepy.
Some people light candles. They wait until Halloween. They wait until certain dates to do this. But usually it's at dark. Usually it's 3 times around the grave. They recite emo. They look in and they see something. Now, when I was there without the plate, I could see where maybe a reflection would catch the light of a candle or a flashlight. And maybe you could be tricked into seeing something there. But Matt, you did it in the broad daylight.
I did. And I did it when I was a teenager. I just don't remember exactly
That's
what
what's
happened.
wrong. That's what's wrong with you. Okay.
There's a lot more than that.
That's
No,
a different,
but,
different
as
podcast.
Back in the mid 90s, yeah, some friends and I went up there. We had a whole night of things that we did up in Salt Lake, and that was part of it. And I heard the legend was a little bit different, so we maybe did it wrong, and maybe that's why nothing really transpired. But we went up there pre metal whatever they've got up there now, and so you could see in there and stuff, and it was a little creepier for sure.
Yeah.
It was kind of our night of thrills as a teenager back in the day. But we circled the thing around front ways. We didn't go backwards, and so maybe we did it wrong, and that's why we didn't conjure Emo's spirit to come visit or anything. But I've heard a lot of my friends that actually have allegedly seen faces and eyes and that kind of thing, and so who knows what to believe or what was being consumed before that. Maybe. You never know. So just saying,
you see what you want to see, huh?
Yeah, it's been around for a long time. I mean, I'm old. We've firmly discussed and established this fact, but back in the mid 90s, that was still a thing, and it's still a thing now. People are doing it. And then when we went up there the other day, I just thought I'd try my luck one more time. Went around the thing 3 times and repeated Emo's name, and nothing. But we were in the middle of the day, so
with a belly full of pancakes, I doubt we were going to conjure any spirits other than the ones we were creating. So
it did make me need to go to the bathroom, though.
Yeah, that's a large cemetery.
Emo.
It's a large cemetery, and he got his revenge on us. He got us,
and he's still brewing up controversy.
See what you did there.
What I'm saying?
So really, what's the opinion here? Some of the articles I read as recent as this year, as this last year, some people have tried recently to perform this ritual on Halloween night, but security is on to everybody's gig or shtick.
So they won't allow you up there on Halloween night, or what?
Security is tight in that cemetery, period, from what it sounds like. So nobody get in trouble. Don't try this.
You got to sneak up there.
Emo's home.
What are you guys doing on the 31st?
Trick or treating.
Definitely busy that night.
Replenish my candy.
So ever since they boarded it up, ever since they riveted a metal plate covering the hole, the new legend is you still light the candle, you still walk 3 times around backwards, but now you'll see a ghost around the grave with red eyes. So now you got to look close for something circling or coming after you. So that's the new, improved, adjusted legend.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The adapted version.
So it'll live on, I think, generations, right? I think it'll just keep going. Emo's grave, that's a local Utah legend.
Yeah, for sure.
Teenagers love to scare their dates.
It's fun.
So
yeah, it is
I
fun.
think that's where it originated from.
Creepy. Anything to add?
No, just not as creepy as the next one.
I don't know. They have lots of trees.
Okay, lots of
And
trees.
no bathrooms.
They do just in the middle, which is like a mile.
There was a bathroom in the middle?
Yeah, with
I
water
had to go
fountains.
the other day. and
I told
didn't
you where
offer
it
them.
was. I told you where it was. And
I
you guys,
thought you were totally joking.
they looked nice too. They were right there in the middle.
I really had to go.
They had water fountain and
I will just say, I lit it up for the poor Costco boy.
Are you swishing?
there we go.
I'm swishing you would stop doing that.
Okay, that was pretty good.
I got a lot more where that came from, Brandon.
Let's
Spooktacular.
do it.
Spooktacular podcast. You don't know me. Okay, you
That's a
ready?
pretty good impersonation.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, man.
I'll
Barrels
get
of
you,
fun.
He-Man. All right.
Okay, Skeletor.
Thank you. Masters of the Universe.
You weren't the only one watching cartoons when you were growing up Saturday morning.
Yeah. Do they have cartoons in Beaver Dam?
We didn't have TV.
You guys just did
Yeah.
puppet shows for each other
Yeah,
while you
dude.
ate your porridge.
We had to use our own imaginations.
Imaginations.
Yeah. No, I...